Well, joining me now is the newly confirmed administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Deanne Criswell. Administrator Criswell is the first woman confirmed by the Senate to lead the disaster agency since its inception more than 40 years ago, and is sitting down with CBS News for her first interview since being sworn in. Administrator, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nicole. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Before we dive in, I want to ask you about a developing story. Fuel shortages are now being reported in 7 states after a ransomware attack forced the shutdown of Colonial Pipeline. Has FEMA been in conversation with government agencies about disaster relief should these shortages continue?
It's a great question, and yes, FEMA's been in contact with all of our states that have been impacted by this, communicating with them frequently to see if there are any issues. And right now, there's no unmet needs that they need FEMA's assistance for, but be assured that we will continue to communicate with them and be able to support as needed.
I want to turn now to the pandemic. FEMA has stood up mass vaccination sites nationwide to get COVID-19 shots into the arms of adults. Has FEMA tailored its strategy at all to reach the 17 million children who could become eligible for the vaccine as soon as this week?
The COVID vaccine mission has really been such an amazing example of how the government comes together to support those that are impacted by whatever event. And, we supported President Biden's aggressive agenda of getting 200 million vaccines into the arms of Americans within the first 100 days. We are now pivoting some of our strategies from these mass vaccination sites to get into this kind of hub and spoke model where we can get to those more targeted areas where it's harder for people to get those vaccines. And we're going to continue to work with the whole government to make sure that every American that wants a vaccine has the ability to get one.
And just to follow up there, Administrator, the CDC says just 3 states have administered more than 90% of their first dose supply. You talked about getting to those harder to reach, harder to convince individuals. Does that shift mean closing down some of FEMA's pilot mass vaccination centers?
We will only adjust those types of sites based on the needs of the state, and we're really listening to our state and local partners as to what they need to reach their residents. And so as that need diminishes, we'll certainly right size so we can readjust, but really we're taking the lead from our state and local partners.
And right now, FEMA is responding to 121 major disasters nationwide, including 54 stemming from this COVID-19 pandemic. 74% of your emergency managers, as you know, are currently deployed to disaster zones. And we're just days away from tornado, hurricane, and wildfire seasons. So what is the agency doing to prevent burnout here?
Yeah, you can see we've been responding to a number of disasters over the last several years. But I got to tell you that we have the most dedicated and committed workforce here, true public servants here at FEMA. And you can be assured that our priority is making sure that we are ready for this upcoming hurricane and wildfire season and being able to help people before, during, and after disasters as we start to see what the season's going to bring us.
Yeah, well, the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season brought a record 30 named storms. Does FEMA anticipate another record-breaking season? And what is it doing differently this time around to pandemic-proof its response?
It's a good question. There were a lot of named storms last year, but I'll just tell you, it just takes one storm to have a significant impact on a community. And so again, our workforce is looking to the season and what we can do to be prepared. We are going to be there and ready to respond and help people as needed. And we put guidance out last year on how state and local jurisdictions could adjust some of their policies to reflect the COVID requirements, and we're taking those forward into this season as well.
And as you know, rebuilding after these natural disasters costs the U.S. $95 billion with a B in 2020. That's double the 2019 level. I'm curious if you think the federal government should consider offering Americans incentives to move away from some of these disaster-prone areas, and whether or not FEMA needs a dedicated office on climate change.
Yeah, Nicole, there's no question that we're seeing an increase in the number and severity of disasters across the country. And I think right now we have such a great opportunity to start to focus on risk reduction. The only way that we're going to be able to keep up with the demand is to try to reduce the impact that we're seeing. I like to use, my background as a firefighter previously, and all of the money and investment many years ago that was put into fire prevention really had an impact in the number of fires that fire departments across this country were responding to. And today we have that same opportunity to really take a look at how we can invest in system-wide mitigation and system-wide risk reduction so communities can increase their own resilience and we reduce the impact from what these events are going to bring.
Yeah, and what does that look like? Is that partnering with the Army Corps of Engineers?
I think it's partnering with the Army Corps of Engineers, but it's also being able to provide assistance at the state and local level, you know, through some of our new programs like the BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. We have such a transformational opportunity to help jurisdictions think differently about how they're approaching risk reduction. And I'm committed with my team to helping jurisdictions figure out what that looks like so we can start to buy down risk now for those types of events that we're going to see in the future.
Yeah, I want to move on now to something that came up during your confirmation hearing, the U.S.-Mexico border. What is FEMA's role in ensuring migrant families released by the Department of Homeland Security are tested for COVID-19, sheltered, and isolated need be?
Yeah, FEMA was part of the federal family that was supporting that mission, and the work that we did was to research and find locations that we could help support the lead federal agency of HHS in executing their mission. Our role in that mission is winding down so we can reset our personnel and get ready for hurricane season, but we will be ready to pivot as needed if we needed to step in and help again.
Got it. So at this point, the agency does not expect to help HHS stand up additional emergency intake sites for unaccompanied migrant children?
You know, at this point, we're helping with the existing sites that we have, and as HHS determines what need that they might have, we'll definitely partner with them to make sure that they're successful.
I want to talk about the organization, 21,000 personnel in FEMA. A survey released last December by RAND Corporation revealed that more than a quarter of FEMA employees said they were harassed or discriminated against based on their gender or race. What steps is the agency taking to address what some employees have called a toxic work environment?
Yeah, you know, Nicole, I read that report prior to my confirmation, and I was happy to see when I came in here that the agency had started already to take some proactive steps in addressing that. And so I'm working closely with my staff to use our culture improvement action plan that was put in place and really put some items in place that will help our staff. It's important that they feel safe, right? They need to feel safe and have the ability to do their job so we can help the American people. And we're taking positive steps to make that happen.
What do some of those steps look like?
You know, things that include additional training for our supervisors, taking a look at our policies that we have in place and what adjustments do we need to make to existing policies so people understand, so the team understands their roles and responsibilities, and just really creating a culture, right? A culture of acceptance, a culture of inclusion, a culture of equity. Again, so the focus is to make sure all employees have the resources and tools they need to do their job and they feel like they have a safe working environment to do that.
And FEMA has a budget of $74 billion, but last year an advisory council assembled by Congress found that key FEMA programs are far more accessible to those with time, with income, and with greater access. Why is that, and what will the agency do to change, to assist those who need this relief the most?
You bring up a really good point, and equity is one of my priorities coming into this. And equity is both internally in how we operate, but also externally in how we deliver our programs. There's already some assessments underway on how we deliver our grant programs to make sure that they are equitable. But we're also taking a look at our existing programs and how we deliver services. You know, I've seen firsthand the disproportionate impact that communities face by disasters, and it was really made even more apparent during the COVID-19 response during my time in New York City. And we've taken a lot of steps to improve the equity and how we're delivering the programs through COVID-19. And we're going to take those lessons learned into this next hurricane season and see how we can improve that program delivery to have that more equitable lens.
Yeah, and speaking about individual assistance, last month FEMA launched the nation's largest funeral reimbursement program to date. It's got $2 billion in funding behind it. What challenges has the agency faced in running this massive program? How is it fending off fraud?
You know, I think the biggest challenge is it's just a program that we're delivering on a scale that we have never delivered before. But we have already had well over, I don't have the exact numbers, but well over 100,000 people register for the assistance, with several $1 million already going out to those that have had the need for funeral expenses. And, you know, with any program, I think during any disaster, there's always the opportunity for fraud, waste, and abuse, and it's always a concern. And so we've put controls in place to make sure that we can identify that and try to reduce any potential opportunities for people to take advantage of that program when they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I want to follow up on some of those controls you mentioned, because a watchdog report last year did find that FEMA made more than $3 billion in improper and potentially fraudulent payments for home repair assistance, this dating back till 2003. So I want to know, what is the agency doing to reverse this trend?
You know, there's this balance that I think that we need to strike, right, with being able to get money out into the hands of survivors quickly to help them recover, as well as making sure that you have enough auditing mechanisms in place. And then the one can delay the other, right? And so there's this balance that we have to strike between getting money out fast, but making sure we have the right tools in place to enforce the programs. And so we're taking a look at that, and we're going to continue to make improvements in how we can help survivors quickly and expeditiously, but also make sure that we have the right control measures in place to prevent fraud as much as we can.
Yeah, and another area FEMA plans to make improvements: flooding. Floods are the most common disaster in the United States. FEMA's plan to overhaul flood insurance rates to reflect climate risks has been deemed a tough political sell, though, by some lawmakers. It's been delayed multiple times, as you know. When can Americans expect new rates to be rolled out?
You know, we did release new information on this, and again, I think it's a good example of how we're trying to provide equity across the system as well. They are working through the implementation plan for that. I don't have the specific dates to share with you right now. We'll certainly provide more information to the American people, though, as this does continue to roll out, so they can plan accordingly.
Great. Well, we will follow up with you on that. And the Department of Homeland Security announced last month an internal review to address the threat of domestic violent extremism within the department. As we mentioned, FEMA oversees more than 21,000 personnel. What will your role be in facilitating this audit? Has FEMA found any signs of domestic violent extremism within its ranks so far?
That I have not been made aware of any type of domestic violent extremism within our ranks, but know that we are committed, right? We are committed to making sure, again, back to your earlier question, that we're providing an environment that is safe for all employees, and that the diversity, equity, and inclusion that's needed, it becomes a cultural way in how we operate.
Great. And lastly, Administrator, it's been roughly 2 weeks since you took the oath of office. That is not much time for reflection, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What are your thoughts on the historic nature of your confirmation? What does it mean to have a confirmed female leader at this agency's helm for the very first time?
You know, I think first and foremost, I'm just committed to the profession of emergency management as a whole. I think emergency managers have such a unique skill set, and I'm excited to help elevate the role of emergency managers, not only at the federal government, but hopefully across the state and local level as well. And at the same time, I think being the first female in this position provides an opportunity for others across the emergency management field, again, at the federal, state, and local level, to see that this is a great career and it's very rewarding, and there's nothing that I enjoy more than helping the American people.
Well, that seems like a great place to end it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Administrator.
All right, thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it.